Do you want a garden that you plant once and you don't have to plant again? A lot of homesteaders plant an annual garden in the spring and harvest before winter comes. Most do not realize they can garden year-round, depending on what they plant. But did you know that you could have a garden that you plant one time and it continually give you food for years without having to do anything? That is what this video is all about. Why don't more people do this? It basically boils down to just a few things, which we will get into. But first, let me help you understand the history behind this. The indigenous people from around the world have been growing crops this way for centuries. Morocco is the home of one of the oldest sustainable food forests, which dates back roughly 2,000 years. So this isn't a new concept. In today's modern American society, if someone decides to grow their own food, it is usually in perfectly aligned rows in the backyard, or if you think of it in a larger scale, it is big farm companies with machinery and fields of crops being highly over-harvested with the same annual crops and chemicals being added to the soil so that those same crops can be planted in the next growing season. We have become accustomed to a lifestyle of needing something quickly. Many Americans lose interest if they know that they can't have it right then and there, like they do when they go to the grocery store and pick up whatever they want, whenever they want. Having a perennial garden takes patience. They can take months to establish or even years. Understanding which crops to plant in your particular growing climate zone is another flaw most people have. Apples and pears aren't suited to every growing climate. Research and time is needed to understand your particular soil requirements, seasonal temperature changes, pollination requirements, good and bad insects, and particular companion planting. Once you have a good grasp on your local area and these other concepts, you can then turn your garden into a food forest that will feed your family for decades. Wouldn't it be nice to harvest more abundantly than the last year with less labor? The first time I heard this, it was like a light bulb moment that went off in my head. I had never even thought about it. I was at prepper camp in Saluda, North Carolina a few years ago, sitting in the front row of Mr. Rick Austin's Secret Garden class. He went through how he has a secret food forest, and thoughts of my own perennial food forest garden began bouncing around in my head. He wrote a book on this, and I highly recommend you getting it. In a perennial food forest system, there are layers of plants. All of these layers can be used for food or other uses on a homestead. The tallest layer are trees, which provide shade. This can be for other shade-loving plants, or they can provide shade for animal shelters or cooling power for structures you have on your homestead. Pruned or chopped wood can provide heat for the home or a fire to cook with, or some barks of trees can provide medicine. Branches provide shelter for small wildlife and insects, while the roots can help break up compacted soil. The next layer down is usually composed of semi-dwarf sized fruit and nut trees. These trees provide a lot of what the larger trees do, along with harvestable edible fruit and nuts. Below that layer resides what is called the understory layer. This is where there is a lot of shade. If you plant sun-loving shrubs and plants like blueberries and blackberries, they should be planted on the outer drip line of the mature trees. Trees that are more shade-loving can be planted closer to the trunk of the trees, such as Russian olive, kale, currants, and gooseberries. Out from this layer, Vining crops such as beans, kiwi, and grapes should be planted. The trees provide a natural trellising system. Don't forget about herbs. There are many perennial herbs that can be planted. These culinary and medicinal herbs should be planted in different areas of these layers. They can attract beneficial insects, repel pests, and even deter some diseases. They can also pull nutrients upward from deep within the soil for other plants to feed from. They can also balance nitrogen levels, act as natural mulch, and even suppress weeds. You can even go as far as inoculating logs with mushrooms. In order to implement a perennial food forest on your homestead, you must first familiarize yourself with your land, paying close attention to the microclimate, weather patterns, water flow, and soil type. Then research the types of trees that grow in your area, along with perennial crop varieties that are legal to grow in your area. Sometimes you may find a few crops that could be illegal to grow. You also need to research perennial herbs along with companion planting. We tend to think that a perennial food forest will give us only edible fruits, nuts, vegetables, and herbs, but there is much more to it than that. It invites beneficial wildlife that helps pest control, and the soil reaps the benefits of having deeply rooted herbs that pull up extremely beneficial minerals from the earth. This in turn gets into you when you eat the crops, fruits, nuts, and herbs from these food forests. Just look at the health benefits that this type of growing can provide. I encourage you to try this different level of sustainability, knowing you do not need to plant perennial crops every year. Good things certainly do come to those who are willing to put the work in and research, and then have the patience to wait for everything to be established. With how the world is now, it is imperative you get a perennial food forest started now, so that when SHTF happens, you will be ready. You won't have to rely solely on an annual vegetable garden to provide needed fuel for your body. Get your perennials in the ground now. Let them do the work. SHTF Survival Homestead Teaching Farm thanks you for watching this video. Please continue to help us help you by liking, sharing, and subscribing.